Hey, 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 hey. Frankie says, hi, Ori. Yeah, yeah. How's Ori? Oh, my ear itches. Hey, Fancy the Who. Frankie says, hi. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry it's raining. I won't tell you about our weather. It's just dark here. Has anybody checked out the color on this book? Damn. So, is Sienna going to be here? I skimmed through the first 3 chapters and it looks pretty good. I don't know how hot it'll get warm. I know that much. It's gonna get warm, but I don't know how hot I'll get it with it tonight, but it's gonna get warm. And let me tell you, there's some good old male voices in there too. So the voices are coming out tonight, ladies. I know y'all be happy. Vincey, I got your package ready to go. I just got to look your address up. I got it in one of my books over there. If not, I'll text you. But I got your package ready to go. And I got to get Audrey's ready to go with her. It's your calendar and your planner book. And Nina's is, I got to get her package done up and ready to go. And I got Miss Cam's ready to go. And I put happy birthday to her from all 3 of us. Did we? Oh, man. Yeah. The calendar you probably don't want to open up around the children. Just saying. Jack and Lou Who. I just saw your message. I just really need more help on the just pronunciation. Names. I didn't really see much Greek in it, but names. Yeah, it's just more pronunciation of names, that kind of thing. So, like, there's a what is how does he say? Um, there's her name it's Kipos. So is it going to be Kipos or Kapos or Kipos? And then his name is Hagen. Kepos. Kepos. Okay. And then his last name is, whoops, why are you up there? His last name is Lkaios. Lycos. I don't know, but there's Greek. So we'll see. Who else is here? Only flash. Alrighty. All right, it's 8:06. We'll get started, and anybody shows up, I guess. If not, it'll be one of our nights, and they can just miss it because it's gonna be a good one. Alrighty. There's the cover, my ladies. Master of Sin. Master of Sin by Sienna Snow. Mm-mm. All right, are we ready? All right, chapter 1. Penny. Penny, you need to find someone who brings out the wild side you try so hard to repress. I stared at my younger brother, Adrian, as if he had lost his mind. Don't don't look at me like that. I'm serious. You're 27 and live like you're an 80-year-old spinster. Yes, you're right. I'll get right on to dancing on tables between working 60-hour weeks and keeping Mommy Dearest away from us. Jackie's in the house. No matter how much I wanted it, there was no way I could afford to let loose, especially if I wanted to continue to make sure Adrian's future was protected. My passions, desires, and true nature would remain locked down behind the walls of the all business Persephone Kepos. Kepos, I think is what we did. We didn't decide. Kepos. Like the E in kept. Okay. Kepos. Persephone Kepos. Any deviation from the uptight girl I projected could lead to my stepmother ousting me from the company I was so desperate to save. Penny, I give two shits about the company or what Mom thinks. Besides, in less than 2 months, I will own my shares outright. Then you and I together will own the majority of the company, and the woman who gave birth to me can go back to banging the pool boy. I bit the inside of my mouth, trying to hold in my thoughts on the situation of his inheritance. If Dara Trevor Kippos had any say, she would never relinquish control of the shares or the company. If my suspicions were right, her acquiring the percentage she currently owned was due to nefarious circumstances anyway. I'd known as a 7-year-old that my stepmother only cared about Papa's money and status. She'd preyed on my father, Jacob Kepos, a lonely widower, and somehow convinced him I needed a mother. When in reality, the last thing she ever wanted to do was be a mother to me or the baby she'd conceived to force Papa's hand. Be a mother to me or the baby she'd conceived to force Papa's hand into marriage. It had taken another 5 years before Papa had seen through Dara's manipulation and filed for divorce. Not 3 days later, a drunk driver had run off the road, killing him the moment his car hit a tree, which in turn left Dara in charge of two miners and a $1 billion horticulture import export business. Convenient how things worked out in her favor. I knew without a doubt that she was involved in Papa's death, but I couldn't prove it. And until Adrian owned his shares outright, I'd hold off on pursuing my suspicions and play the dutiful yet weak Capo's heiress. I'll make a deal with you. The second you turn 21, I will kick up my heels and party like it's 1999. He rolled his eyes. I'll be 50 before you do anything that would go against Mom's rules. Did you forget? I know in detail what you spend your free time doing. By the way, have you decided on whether you're going wide or keeping it limited? My eyes nearly bugged out of their sockets as I scanned the room, making sure one of Dara's spies, disguised as cleaning staff, wasn't around. Adrian and a few trusted Besides of Adrian and a few trusted people, no one knew anything about what I did outside of Capos International. The house Papa had bought for my mom was no longer the safe haven it had been before Dara entered the picture. Yes, I owned half of it, but because Adrian had inherited the other half, Dara had access, and she'd placed many spies in the house masquerading as staff. Adrian and I had learned early on in life to keep all conversations about our personal business outside of any property Dara could feel freely enter. It was through a listening device that she discovered the name of the boy I had a crush on as a teen. She'd used that information to embarrass me in front of his family and then told me I would never attract a boy like him. It wasn't until a few weeks after the incident that I discovered the bug while cleaning my room. After that day, I made sure never to have any conversations in the house that I wasn't okay with Dara hearing. Even the condo Kepos had given me as part of my executive package was only used to sleep in. All of my personal and business files and property were kept safe at a warehouse I rented near my cousin Hannah's house. Watch what you say in here. I don't want any backlash coming in your direction. Dara probably has this place bugged again. Oh, she does. What? I shouted. Fuck. If Dara got any inclination that I had interest outside of Capos International, she'd go out of her way to destroy them. Don't worry. I took care of any issues. The few things I found are now safe in the pool house with a recording of the activities of her most recent boy toy. You nearly gave me a heart attack. I dropped my head to the back of the couch and released a relieved breath. Your private activities are safe. A grin touched his lips and he picked up the soda sitting on the coffee table next to his party-sized tray of chicken nuggets. No one will ever find out you're a closeted freak who'd rather make love to her elderflower concoctions than a real man. Great. Now you're a comedian. Penny, I'm not an idiot. His voice grew irritated. I'm smarter than you're smarter than you believe. Everything's under control. No one can enter this room, moreover, this property, without me knowing or having any listening device scrambled. How the hell would you know? I trailed off and then said, what the fuck are you mixed up in? Do you know you only cuss when you're worried? Adrian, I warned, you're the one who made me do those coding classes as a kid. Don't make me kill you. I clenched my jaw. That was when it hit me. How else would he have been able to get me the financials of various companies for some of my proposals? I hadn't questioned him initially, but as of late, I'd wondered how an almost 21-year-old was able to get confidential information on companies that was only privy to companies' inner circle. You're a hacker! Oh my god! I knew having tech mogul Christo David's son as a roommate was too good to be true. I folded my arms across my body and glared at my too smart for his own good brother. Oh shit, your foot is doing that tap 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 thing. It's not as bad as you think. He raised his hands in surrender. I swear there's nothing to worry about. Nearly everything I've ever done has been on the up and up. Adrian, do not get mixed up in anything that will get you in trouble. I have enough crap on my shoulders to add the possibility of you getting arrested too. Too late. He popped a chicken nugget into his mouth. College is a place to make new friends and acquaintances. Some will help me succeed by opening the right doors, and others will give me the tools to run Calpos International until I find someone to do the job for me. And hacking's part of it. I will not have your future destroyed. Do you hear me? It isn't private if the information is located on unsecured servers. I swear to God, you could drive a person to drink. I inhaled deeply a few times in hopes of letting it calm me enough not to strangle my baby brother. Who are you involved with? I didn't bring enough water with me tonight. He responded by picking up another nugget from the table in front of us and taking a bite of the breaded white meat. I gave him the glare that used to make him hide when he was younger. He held my gaze in challenge. Then, after a few seconds, he sighed and looked away. You have that death stare mastered. I continued my irritated stance. Dara may not care what happened to Adrian, but I would do everything in my power to make sure he succeeded. He was all I had left. I would walk straight into fires of hell to protect him. It is a good book. Opening the right doors and others, let's see. If you have to know, it was the Lakios brothers. I don't even know how to say that. Lakios? Does that sound anywhere right? My heart stopped and a wave of uneasiness settled on my shoulders. You've got to be kidding me. Do you have any idea what will happen if Dara finds out? I stood and began to pace. There has to be a way to get you out of whatever deal you made with them. It's not like they're mafia. Hagen, Pierce, and Zach probably know more about running a billion-dollar company than anyone else we know. Hell, each of them are masters in their fields. You'd be amazed at how much I've learned in the past year. They don't hold any punches when it comes to telling me where I fucked up, but they give me credit when I bring something new to the table. Past year? My voice grew high-pitched as I pinched the nose of my nose. Why am I just now finding out? Because I knew you'd react this way. No matter what Mom wants to think, they are legit businessmen who made a success of their lives. You're the one who told me not to take everything at face value. I knew better than anyone that the Lakios brothers were very different than the image they projected to the world. Hell, I'd grown up with them. Ray Lakios had been my mother, Karina's best friend. They were both heiresses from Patras, a large Greek city built on the foothills of Mount Panachakayan, overlooking the Gulf of Patras. My mother was the daughter of an Indian shipping magnate who moved to Greece from India, and Ray was the daughter of an international spice distributor. The two women had met during a school field trip and became fast friends. One of those ride or die things, as my mom used to say. They'd both ended up marrying Greek businessmen who moved to Vegas. Nearly every holiday I can remember before Mama died was celebrated with the Lycoses. I'd even for a short time believed that the Lachias boys were my brothers. No, that wasn't true. Pierce and Zach were like my brothers, being only a few years older than me, and in a sense still were. But Hagen, he was another story. The oldest brother was the boy every mom knew would be bad for their daughter. He'd been the rebel, constantly in trouble and unapologetic. He fascinated me, especially those intense, mesmerizing eyes of his. It was as if he could see down to the depths of my soul. He was the only man who'd ever made me want things the prim and proper Persephone should never reach towards. Good thing I'd outgrown it. Liar. Now he fascinated me even more. He was truly the dark, dangerous man any sane woman was supposed to keep a safe distance from, but couldn't resist. He ran the majority of Vegas nightlife, from top restaurants and dance clubs to shows. Though there were rumors he was also involved in the underworld of Vegas, but deep down, I knew he wasn't what everyone believed him to be. The experiences of my childhood had disappeared once Dara came into the picture. Any visits went from running around our houses, playing games, and getting into mischief to formal events wrapped in etiquette and order. Dara had kept up the old traditions, as she liked to call them, for a few years, but something had happened around the time I turned 11, causing a massive fight between Ray and Dara. All I could remember was the anger on Dara's face and the directive that we were no longer going to associate with any Lycoses. Benny, are you listening? They're pretty decent guys despite the rumors. I know this. I grew up with them. I'm just afraid of what Dara will do if she knows you work for them. I don't need my Kepos inheritance. My mom left me enough money to fund a lifetime of frivolous spending. It's you I worry about. Well, stop. I'll make it without it. The fierceness with which he spoke had me closing my mouth. Adrian paused for a moment as if he was trying to gather his thoughts and then said, "The company isn't my dream. It never was, and I know it isn't yours either." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't lie to him. There were other things I wanted to do with my life, was doing with my life, and they had nothing to do with the legacy of Capos International. A pang of guilt hit me for even having those thoughts. The company was all that we had left of Papa. I know I know what you're thinking, and you need to let it go. Papa wouldn't want us to hold on to something that made us miserable. So what are you saying? I won't let Dara win. She's taken so much from our family. I have a plan for once I have those shares. A wicked smile touched Adrian's lips. And working with the Lycosis brothers is a way to achieve it. All I ask is that you trust me. I stared at my gorgeous brother with his piercing sky blue eyes, model good looks, and a soul so much older than a 20-year-old should have. He wouldn't he wouldn't work with Pierce, Zach, and especially Hagen without weighing the consequences or analyzing the situation from every angle. It wouldn't surprise me if he took the skills he learned and created an empire more prominent than what his mentors owned. Adrian stood and came to sit beside me on the couch, pushing my feet down and then laying his head in my lap, as he had done since he was a toddler. Without thought, I began to play with his hair. I miss my grandson doing that. He just turned 20 years old this year. Yeah, it's been a long time since he's done it. But he used to do that all the time. My brother, too. Will you trust me, Penny? For once, let me take on some of the burden. I love this boy, man, so much. He was so much like Papa. Tears burned the backs of my eyes. No matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't shield him in a protective cocoon. Releasing a sigh, I said, I trust you. You're the only one I have ever trusted. Good. He sat up, reached into his back pocket, and pulled out a card, handing it to me. I knew you'd see reason. Be there at 11:30 tomorrow. I glanced at the card and felt my heart skip a beat. It was the address for Hagen's new restaurant, the one that would open next week and was reported as the most indulgent and opulent of any restaurant lounge in Vegas. I glanced at the card and felt my heart skip a beat. It was the address for Hagen's. Oh, wait. Why am I meeting with Hagen? Because he has agreed to help you get the answers to the questions you're too afraid to pursue. While I work my side, you find out the truth about Papa. Chapter 2, Hagen. All right, now I got another voice. Does calm ruthlessness come naturally to you, or is it a trait you learned on the job? You're one to talk, I said to my younger brother Zacharias, lifting a tumbler of whiskey to my lips and watching the dancers set up for the opening of my new restaurant and nightclub next door. All three of us are cut from the same cloth, and that would be Colin Dimitri Lycos. Speak for yourself. I have a heart that beats in my chest. Pierce, my other brother, added before he winked at a passing server who'd caught his eye when he'd arrived for what I like to call the weekly Lycos Brothers Roundup. I snorted. So says the man who plotted revenge against the woman who dumped him when he was barely old enough to grow pubes. I know you. I told you. I warned you. Deep voices were involved the night. Great visual, asshole. Zach picked up his phone, scanned it, responded to the message, and set it back on the table without blinking an eye. So, how are we supposed to handle the fallout? Zach Pierce and I ran Vegas. It may sound conceited, but it was true. Others may have big projects in casinos, but they all knew that one word from any one of us and all my endeavors would come screeching to a halt. Case in point, the situation Zach was reaming me about. Since he broke it, he has to fix it, Pierce interjected. Shrugging my shoulders, I released a breath. You two pussies didn't want to get your hands dirty. I just made it very clear to the foreman that if he messes with the business dealings of one Lycos brothers, he messes with all of us. Yeah, but the dipshit turned tail and ran. Now I'm short a construction foreman, out over 100 grand, and delayed on the hotel build out. Zach picked up a few nuts sitting in a bowl in the center of the table and popped them in his mouth. Cry me a river. That's chump change. You make more than that in less than a minute. The one thing Zacharias Lacoas wasn't short on was money. He gambled and won, both literally and through real estate. There were few risks he wouldn't take. Zach shrugged. Money's money. I'm not sure why you're bitching to me. It's not like I beat his ass or anything. It was a very civilized conversation. Sure, I buy that. Pear shook his head. You probably made him piss himself when you walked up. I looked down at myself. I was probably the most laid back brother out of the three of us. Pierce was the most volatile of all of us. His emotions motivated him in ways that were only going to cause him grief. And then there was Zach. He was the most sensitive and most ruthless. His whole world revolved around his end goal, the destruction of our father. But that had nothing to do with me. I'd closed the door on Colin years ago. It would take more than a chump foreman to piss me off. I'd learned long ago anger and temper only got me so far. Cold, calm efficiency garnered greater and more effective reactions. My throat is itchy tonight. I was outside today. For the record, I lifted my tumbler and sipped my drink. I never once raised my voice or threatened him with bodily harm. I only made it clear that our legal team would make it very hard for him to procure future contracts with any organization if he didn't get his act in gear. It was all on the up and up. Cold is what it is. You love playing up that reputation of yours. It worked, didn't it? I said, lifting a brow. I couldn't deny my past added to the don't fuck with me reputation, but then again, when one is thrown out onto the streets as a teen, one does what they have to. It's either survive and join the underworld or get eaten by it. Though I wasn't involved in half of the shit people assumed I was. You're you're such an ass, Zach said. Next time, I'll handle it myself. Would you rather I'd punched him as you suggested, pretty boy? My way is cleaner. At least with Z's way, they aren't going to assume a mob hit is in their future. Sometimes I wished I'd drowned you both at birth. It wouldn't have worked. I do have 6 gold medals in swimming, and Zach here was the baby and everyone's favorite, so Mom would have kicked your ass. Assholes, I muttered. I can't wait to see the woman who melts the ice in your veins. Zach smirked at Pierce and just gestured with his thumb at me. I bet the frozen tundra he calls a temper will erupt at every turn, and then maybe he'll feel something like us mere mortals. You'll be waiting a lifetime or two. She doesn't exist. Women have a place in my life, and long term isn't one of them. My kind of man. With the lifestyle I lived, I'd never had a shortage of companions to stand by my side or keep my bed warm. Nothing ever lasted more than a few weeks. By my choice, not theirs. Yeah, it was cold, but there was no point in stringing someone along and giving them false hope. Anyone I was involved with knew from the beginning that we had what we had was no strings and with a finite expiration date. Case in point, Zach said. This proves you have something other than hot blood that runs in your veins. At least I can say I have a bad relationship or two to keep me from anything serious. You act like relationships are a plague. Whatever. I like my life the way it is. No complications, no regrets. Simple and easy. I leaned back in my chair and lifted my glass in my brother's direction before taking a deep gulp. I go bullshit. Pierce smirked with a gleam in his eyes. Meaning, there's only one woman who has always gotten under your skin. And who might that be? A look passed between Zach and Pierce that made me want to punch both of them. In unison, they said, Persephone. Is it Persephone, maybe? But that's what it is. Persephone Capos. Immediately, an image of the beautiful goddess with golden skin she inherited from her Indian mother and her father's piercing emerald eyes appeared in my mind. She was a man's walking wet dream with curves one could hold on to while driving in deep and lips meant to wrap around a fat cock. Fuck, what the hell was I doing? Focus, dumbass. That's her name, Persephone, right? That's not the way see. I had to say it a bunch of times before I got it right. Good try, but I'm too old for her. Keep telling yourself that lie if you want to, but we know the truth. That girl's been giving you a hard on since she hit puberty. I'd be damned if I confirmed or denied Pierce's claim. Persephone was, that's why they call her Penny. Persephone was someone a man like me could want from a distance. She was beauty, smarts, curves, and innocence. My touch would corrupt her and bring her into a world that could cost her everything. It was better that I never acted on the mutual attraction we skirted around for the last decade. Distant friendship was where our relationship would remain. I'll I'll take your silence as a confirmation. Too bad she lives in a gilded cage and her stepmother won't let her anywhere near us. Pierce paused, then continued, especially you. That's because our brother here was the one man Dara Kippos couldn't seduce. Hell hath no fury and all that, Zach added. That's old news. She moved on to barely legal pool boys. You are the reason her precious son works for us under the radar. Imagine the shitstorm Dara will unleash if she finds out we're grooming Adrian to take her job. Zach picked up his phone again, scanned something on the screen, responded, and then set it back on the table. It was more than likely the latest stock updates and trade orders. The men never stopped working. I wasn't lazy by any means, but I had the ability to turn it off once in a while. Speaking of Adrian, Pierce said, that boy is brilliant. The places he can hack, the information he has the ability to acquire is remarkable. Plus, the kid has balls, I added. Adrian Campos had somehow circumvented my security to enter one of my most exclusive and restricted parties, walked up to me, and without blinking said, if you want to prevent your data from being hacked, you need to hire me. At first, I thought the little boy I'd bought ice cream for had lost his mind. Then he'd pulled up his phone and showed me how he had infiltrated HBZ Holdings, the conglomerate my brothers and I had created for our different ventures. My brothers and I were floored. We had implemented the most high level cybersecurity money could buy, and here was a 19-year-old college sophomore cracking our system. Needless to say, we hired him. All Adrian asked for was to learn how to run an international organization like the one he'd inherited when he turned 21, and never to let his mother know what he was doing. For the last year and a half, he'd taken on any job we gave him, and to our amazement, continued to evade our security. Zach jokingly called Adrian our own personal Hermes after the Greek trickster god who could obtain and send information as well as infiltrate any known place. That he does, Zach agreed. Too bad his mother has no idea he is planning to overthrow her in the very near future. We're going to need to make sure nothing happens to him. I have no doubt his mother would prevent him from obtaining control of Kippos Internationals. Pierce frowned. Zach nodded. The only saving grace that boy has is Penny. She gave up her life for him. She's more to a mother to him than that woman who gave birth to him. Adrian is too smart to not know that he has to cover his back. It's Penny I worry about. Pierce watched me, and I knew he was trying to gauge my reaction. Dar will destroy her to maintain control of the company. If there was one thing I knew, it was that Persephone Kepos wasn't the docile flower she allowed the world to see. The girl had secrets, ones I discovered recently, ones that would knock the conniving stepmother off her ass. I wouldn't I wouldn't discount her cunning. She is so much more than what she lets the world believe. I swirled the aromatic liquor. Now, if you two are done analyzing my sex life and drinking my limited edition whiskey, I have a lunch meeting to attend. With who and about what? Zach asked. I couldn't hide the smile that touched my lips. They were probably going to shit themselves when I told them. It's a business proposition with someone I like to call Starlight. Penny. I need all the latest analysis of the recent batches, I said to my assistant and cousin Anya, Anaya. Is it Anya? As I walked around the distillation vats. I also need to know any updates on the property negotiations for the European manufacturing locations. You'll have it by the end of the day, Anya paused. By the way, we received another offer from Lycos Holdings for a face to face meeting. They sent over an extremely lucrative proposal for the exclusive use of firewater for the hotels, casinos, and venues. I sighed and shook my head. The answer is as it is always, Anna. No, Colin isn't someone I plan to now or ever work with. Won't you consider meeting with him, if only to see what he has to say? Wait a second, I studied Anya. Does Colin know about my involvement with firewater? No, I swear, no one outside of our circle knows anything about who owns PSK distilleries. According to Henna, he loves our whiskey and would love to have distribution rights to the product. Even if I considered his offer, I wouldn't accept it. I have a deal established with Hagen, Pierce, and Zach. I won't renege on our contract. Would you entertain a limited distribution deal? Colin and Hannah have been working their asses off to reestablish Lacoa's Holdings appeal. He isn't the same man he was a decade ago. He's done more for Hannah and me than anyone could ever imagine. He has a lot of regrets, and most of them revolve around his sons. My cousins, Hannah and Anya Anthony, were the daughters of my mom's sister, Lena, whom I called Lena Mossy. Is it Mossy? Masi? Lena Mossy and my deceased uncle, Victor Anthony. They had an adoration for Colin Lycos that I could never understand. No, that wasn't true. I could understand it even if I couldn't comprehend why Colin had changed his ways. About 15 years earlier, Uncle Victor had been indicted on charges of embezzlement and tax evasion. He swindled nearly $1 billion from his business partners, friends, and family. Among them was Colin Lycos. Colin had lost almost $50 million in investments. It had been a national scandal, and even more so after Uncle Victor had committed suicide to avoid prosecution. In order to escape the fallout and backlash of all the angry investors, Lena Mossy had left the state and assumed a completely different identity. What was most surprising in all of this was that Colin had been instrumental in keeping my aunt and cousins safe. He'd gone as far as having new birth records, bank accounts, and school histories established. Then, when they were older, he'd funded their college educations and offered them jobs in his organization. Henna had accepted and now ran Lycoa's Holdings, but Anya was a science and computer nerd who, like me, enjoyed behind-the-scenes tinkering. I could accept my cousin's loyalty to Colin, especially after all he'd done for them. However, I had my own loyalties, and it was the 3 young boys Colin had disowned when they were barely grown. I wasn't sure I would ever be able to get over the fact Hagen had lived on the streets for a time because he had nowhere to go. I know to this day the man's dark reputation was something he had to build to avoid becoming a Vegas statistic. I could still remember Papa's anger at Colin when he'd heard about what he'd done to Hagen. Papa had driven around the streets of Vegas looking for a skinny teen with looks too attractive to survive without coming out unscathed. Shaking the thoughts from my head, I looked at Anya. I love you, but you have to stop beating this dead horse. Praising Colin's acts of service won't change the fact that he hurt 3 people I care about. I know. She released a resigned breath. It's hard for me to reconcile the man he is now with the one he was before. Just so you know, he worries about you too. He's seen how Dara treats you. Sadness hit my heart. Colin had been one of my favorite people when I was younger. He told the most amazing stories and always encouraged me to pursue science when good Greek and Indian girls were supposed to focus on family and culture over their studies. If I was honest with myself, it was the seed Colin had planted that had given me the push to research the process of aged whiskey. And because of what I'd learned, I was able to create Firewater, a whiskey that tasted like one aged for 20 years, but without waiting for the results. Science and technology had the ability to defy time. You, of all people, should know the mousy pushover that the world sees isn't who I am. Never mind. I can't think about that right now or Colin. The goal is to analyze the next batch and set Adrian up to succeed when he takes over Dara and when he takes over and Dara is history. All right, chapter 3. We ready? Last chapter. Let me change my leg here. Okay. Penny. A little after 11:30, I arrived at Ada Astro for my lunch with Hagen. I took a deep breath and waited for the valet to open my door. Wow, this is some car. The awe on the attendant's face made me smile. I may have the world believing I was a weakling, but there was one thing I was known for, and it was my love of sports cars, especially refurbished classic ones. I inherited my obsession for fast vehicles from my parents, who had met at a racetrack in Greece when Mama had illegally entered my grandfather's Aston Martin and won. She had been barely 16 and had snuck out of her gilded cage overlooking the Mediterranean. The fact she'd won the race hadn't mattered to my grandfather. He'd seen it as being corrupted by European morals and had sent morals and had sent her to live in India for 2 years with a distant uncle. However, when she'd returned, Papa had all but kidnapped her away from my grandfather, and within a month they'd been married. I drove the very car now, a 1965 Aston Martin DB5. Every time I was behind the wheel, I felt close to my 2 amazing parents. Thank you, I said as I slipped out of the car, adjusted my skirt, and set my handbag on my arm. I'll park it next to Mr. Lyco's Spider. I glanced to the 66 Alfa Romero in a nearly empty parking lot. Of course, Hagen would have the same vice I had. The man was all things dangerous, and therefore I was attracted to him. The thought of him had anxiety seeping into my stomach. Shit. I'd hoped the drive would calm my nerves. I'd barely interacted with him for the last 15 years, and here I was about to ask him to help me find out the truth about Papa's death. After Adrian had sprung the news of the meeting he had set up, I'd grilled him for all the details of what he had told Hagen. Adrian insisted that all he said was that I needed to help with a personal matter. My brother was a man of few words, so I assumed that that was the extent of the details he'd given. The fact Hagen had agreed without question added to the uncertainty I was feeling. I closed my eyes for a moment, gathering my courage. I could do this. I could meet with the man who starred in a majority of my fantasies and ask him to help me find out if Dara had orchestrated Papa's death. I expected there to be a price for his help. Hagen had a reputation for expecting payment in kind for his assistance in any matter. The problem was that I'd probably agree to anything he asked if it meant Dara was out of our lives for good. Maybe I'd be able to convince Hagen to give me something else in addition to his help, something I'd never have considered before. But hell, I was already stepping into his world. Or maybe I'd just offer it without reciprocation. I couldn't think of any better way to lose my V card than with a bad boy like Hagen. 29 years old with a V card. You don't even know what I was doing at 29. Whew. My pulse jumped thinking about the possibility. Snap out of it, Penny. You are about to have lunch with the man known as the master of sin. Your libido needs to take a back burner to logic. Miss Capos? A woman approached me who I could only assume was the hostess. She had long blonde hair and legs for miles. The color of her lips matched. Excuse me, Frankie. Jackie, say hi to Frankie. She had long blonde hair and legs for miles. The color of her lips matched the form fitting dress she was wearing. She was breathtaking and what I would dub very Vegas. I smiled at her and she responded with a genuine one of her own. Yes, that's me. My name is Camille. She shook my hand. I'm the manager of Ida Astro. If you would follow me, Mr. Lycoas is waiting for you on the veranda. Okay, here it goes. I squared my shoulders and followed Camille inside. The interior of the restaurant was bright with clean lines and glass sculptures everywhere. This was nothing like the dark and indulgent atmosphere Hagen's other establishments were known for. There was this polished there was a polished elegance to this place. In fact, the color scheme was very similar to what I'd have chosen if I had had a home outside of the corporate one I used. It wasn't as if I didn't have the funds to buy a house. I'd gone so far as to put an offer on a dream home in Summerlin, Nevada, a small suburb of Vegas that would have allowed me to step away from all the Sin City was known for. Well, he can do that. Would you like that, Frankie? You want to be the mascot, the Book Nook mascot? There you go. He's my snuggle bug. I pet him. He lays on my boobs and I pet him. But almost immediately I decided against it. It was better to let Dara think she had ultimate control of my life until Adrian took over the company. I would let Dara think my inheritance from my mom was tied up until I was 30, as she believed, and be the dutiful but inconsequential stepdaughter she tolerated. As we walked farther into the room, I noticed there were chandeliers of various shades strategically positioned throughout the giant space, giving the area an elegant atmosphere without looking overly crowded. A bartender looked up as we neared and smiled. He was opening a case of firewater, one of a very exclusive bottling that I only allowed to be distributed in limited supply and only to the right clientele. It still shocked me how much of a demand there was for my elderflower infused whiskey. I'd introduced my whiskey a little under 8 years ago to the market and had garnered a loyal following. It wasn't until 3 years ago when an Oscar winning movie star had thrown a party with the whiskey as the main ingredient in everything he served that Firewater's demand had grown to the astronomical level. Literally hours after the party had ended, every A-lister, high-end hotel, and entertainment venue wanted the whiskey. I grinned to myself. Amazing how the right type of marketing could launch a product. Would you like a taste? Camille said, catching my gaze. I'm fine, thank you. It's a special reserve. Mr. Lycoas had to sweet talk the distributor to get 6 bottles. We were lucky enough to get a sip today. It is quite indulgent. I shook my head. I'm good. Camille gave me a shocked look that I turned down the alcohol, then continued through the restaurant. As we walked through the doors leading to the veranda, my breath hitched. Hagen leaned a hand against the railing that overlooked the strip and talked on the phone. This man personified the sexiest sin Greek god name the tabloids had given him. The tailored suit he wore fit his toned body to perfection. His face was all hard lines and angles with a symmetry that usually was only achievable through the expert precision of a surgeon. The only things giving away his bad boy vibe were the tattoos on his hand and the ones I glimpsed drawn along the skin of the open collar of his shirt. Immediately, a low throb began to pulse between my legs. He hadn't even looked in my direction, and I had a deep need to jump him. At that moment, Hagen lifted his gaze to mine, and a wicked glint entered his eyes. Why did he always stare at me like that? And why did my body react to that look? This was the reason I avoided him at all cost. No one could know how he affected me, especially not Darda, or she'd find some way to hold it over my head. Hagen ended his call and walked in my direction. When he was a foot away, he grasped my hand and lifted it to his lips. A shiver shot through me the second his lips grazed my skin. Then he kissed my cheek, and his intoxicating scent of spiced cologne and soap engulfed my senses. Persephone Starlight Kepos, it is good to see you. You look beautiful as always. Why did his use of my full name make a tingle shoot through my core? I had two of the stupidest names on the planet. No Greek girl should ever be named Persephone and Starlight. I still have no idea what my parents were smoking when they decided on that one. After a few moments of staring at him, my brain fired and I said, It's nice to see you too. Something about him had me all tongue tied in a way Pearson's act never made me feel. And the thought of dreaming about touching them, wanting to do deliciously dirty things to them, made me want to gag, not squeeze my thighs together. I was going to need. Thank you, Audrey, because I'm finishing this chapter, sister. It's just going to happen. I was going to need a long, cold shower and a session with my vibrator when I got home. Hagen released my hand and gestured to a table set up with fine china and an array of appetizers. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I had the chef make a variety of things. I'm sure all of it will be perfect. Chef Gustave hasn't made a dish I haven't liked. How could I forget? You used to say you were that annoying bitch that made the stuff the chefs cooked on TV. Good. Hand crept up my cheeks as I slid into my seat. Heat crept up my cheeks as I slid into my seat. I'd say that a party Darrow had thrown where the food tasted like dirt spread on toast. I'd said that at a party that Darrow had thrown tasted the food tasted like dirt spread on toast. I've been all of 16 to Hagen's 23. I'd spent the night hungry and irritable. Around midnight, when I'd finally called it a night and made my way to my bedroom, I'd found a takeout bag from one of my favorite restaurants in Vegas. I'd known Hagen was responsible, but I'd never figured out how he managed to sneak it into my bedroom with all the security Dara had positioned around the family house. A gentleman isn't supposed to remind a lady of when she's made unladylike comments. Hagen took his seat and lifted a brow. I've never pretended to be a I've never pretended to be a gentleman, Starlight. Besides, I'm almost positive you thoroughly enjoyed the Kobe beef burger I had waiting for you in your room that night. My mouth watered thinking of the juicy burger. If you want to know the truth, I inhaled it within minutes. I'd spent most of the week before the party starving since Dara had decided to put me on a diet for the party and hoped I'd lose a few pounds. A frown marred his face, but before he could say anything, I spoke. Won't you tell me how you got it past all the security to sneak me a burger? His eyes crinkled at the corners. Some secrets are better left unsaid. Who knows? I may need to rescue the princess in the tower next time instead of commandeering a meal for her. If only he knew how right his words were. A server came to the table and set up a serving of firewater whiskey. You do realize that is almost $1,000 an ounce? I stared at the reddish gold tinged liquid that was set in front of both Hagen and me. I'm sure I can make a bargain with the manufacturer for a few more bottles. He picked up the tumbler and swallowed the drink in one gulp. I licked my lips and felt a sense of panic replace the arousal I had moments earlier. He couldn't know. No one in my world knew. Well, maybe a few people, and they were loyal to the bone. The look in his eyes told me he was more aware of things than I hoped. I guess that all depends on what you offer. It isn't so much what I want to give, but is what is requested of me. Hagen, what are you playing at? I said, trying to keep a tone of calmness in my voice. This isn't a game, Starlight. He said my name in a way that sounded a bit possessive. You're here for something that could put you in danger. How would you know what I'm here for? I knew Adrian would never lie. Your brother is a brilliant boy, but the only reason he would give you a bargain with him would garner the answers to who killed your father. Are you saying you're the devil? He held my gaze, and the desire reignited. And if I wasn't mistaken, something flared in his sapphire eyes. I've been called worse. So tell me, are you here to make a deal with a man who could ruin your pristine reputation? What if I wanted it ruined? What is it going to cost me? He stroked the stubby jaw with a hand covered in tattoos. Let me see. I may want all of the next shipment of firewater. I opened my mouth to deny I had any pull, but he spoke again. Or the exclusive rights to the elderflower you have been secretly developing for your distilleries. Or I clenched my fingers on the edge of the table. I knew better than to think he would want something simple. Or I probed. He covered my hand with his. Or you in my bed to do with whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want. Nina just creamed her panties. Dear God, he hadn't just said that. I pressed my thighs together, trying to relieve the dirty visions popping into my head. Did I shock you, Starlight? My temper flared through the haze of desire. He was fucking with me. We'll see about that. Okay, Penny, you aren't a pushover. Time to stop the pretense. I leaned toward him until we were nearly face to face and said, what if I said you don't need a bargain to have me in your bed? That I would let you do whatever you wanted to me whenever and however. Shock and surprise crossed his face, and he sat back, releasing my hand. Then a deep laugh rumbled from him, making some of the staff around us stop and turn in our direction. There she is, the girl who was hiding under the prim and proper conservative facade. Just as I was about to respond, a man approached us. He was dressed in a leather jacket, and there was no hiding the side piece he had strapped to his body. Mr. Lacaze, we have a situation that requires your attention. Hagen released an irritated sigh. If you'll excuse me a moment. I nodded. Hagen rose and followed the man who could who I only could assume, who could I could only assume worked for him. I watched Hagen move to a section of the restaurant where a group of men stood. Some words were said, and the next thing I knew, Hagen dodged a punch and landed one of his own, sending the man who had swung to the floor. My heartbeat drummed into my ears. What the fuck was happening? The man who attacked Hagen was twice his size and now was on the ground, pinned by three of Hagen's security. They cuffed his arms behind his back and then hauled the man up. As he got to his feet, he looked through the window at me. Something about him was familiar, but I couldn't place him. Hagen followed the direction he looked, and a scowl appeared on his face. He stepped in front of the man, blocking his view of me. After a few more words, Hagen came back outside. His face was a bit flushed, and a line creased between his brows. Sorry about that. Mike used to work for an associate of mine, and he wasn't ready to accept he'd lost his job. Unfortunately for me, I had to be the messenger. In my personal opinion, there was nothing to be sorry about. I was the lucky gal who was privileged to see Vegas's bad boy in action. The fact I was super turned on by it told me I definitely wanted in his pants. I kept my inappropriate thoughts to myself. Hagen set his hand on the back of my chair. I hate to cut our lunch short, but I have to handle the Mike situation. I felt a twinge of disappointment, but covered it quickly and said, It's okay. I have to take care of a few things before I head back to the office anyway. I want a rain check, and next time I promise we won't be disturbed. The idea of being alone with Hagen again sent a wave of desire to my core. I should say no, but there was no way I could resist another lunch with Hagen. I'll hold you to it. I smiled up, and for a split second, there was a gleam in his blue eyes that made it seem as if he had read my thoughts. He offered me his hand, and I slid mine across his palm. The contact felt like electricity shot through me, and from the desire in Hagen's eyes, I'd say he experienced the same thing. I stood and nearly moaned when his palm grazed my waist. He led me through the restaurant and in the direction of the exit. My stomach churned, and I realized I had no desire to leave, even with the potential of another lunch. I wanted to explore the promise I'd seen in Hagen's eyes. Just as we crossed the threshold, he asked, Would you like to see the interior of the new club? Nyx, named for the Greek god of the night, was supposed to be the jewel of all of Hagen's clubs, and I wasn't going to pass up an opportunity to see inside. Yes, I said, a bit too breathless, then added, Do you have to attend to the Mike situation? He can wait. Your time is more important. It was as if he knew I wanted to stay a little longer. He took a set of stairs that led to the underground of Ida, the resort that Hagen ran with his brothers. It is easiest to enter the club through the tunnels. I nodded and followed him through the maze until we entered the hallway that opened into the main dance room of the club. It had the same atmosphere as the restaurant, but with the extra decadent vibe. There was splashes of a reddish gold throughout, and the accent pieces and small details of the walls. From the ceiling hung cages that looked like tasteful chandeliers, but I knew would hold dancers in various states of dress. Hagen saw where I was staring. There's nothing wrong with giving the illusion of classy while indulging in the darker and naughtier side of life. Makes sense. This place is beautiful, different from your others. I designed it around the spirit that makes up all the signature drinks we'll serve. I turned to him. Is that right? I hope you're ready to spend a pretty penny. Starlight, the penny is more than worth it. His words made a knot form in my gut. There was no denying he knew who was behind the coveted whiskey. But what troubled me was why he and his brothers would design a hotel, casino, club, and restaurant around it. Come this way. They're still installing the final lighting, and I don't want us to get in the way. He walked over to a wall, scanned his eye. A door popped out, and he led me inside. Let me guess, one of Adrian's inventions? A smile touched Hagen's lips that gave me visions of what he could do with that mouth. Your brother takes his craft seriously. The door locked behind us, and almost immediately I felt the atmosphere of the office we'd entered change. There was an undercurrent of arousal and need flowing, and it definitely wasn't one sided. I leaned my back against the door and studied the predator in the impeccable suit before me. What was it about him that made me want to throw caution out the window? So, what now? I asked as he took my clutch from my hand and threw it on a nearby table. You tell me. I pressed my palm to my chest, loving the heat that radiated through the material of his shirt. Tell me you feel this. Yes. My excuse is the adrenaline from the asshole earlier. What's yours? I licked my lips and watched his eyes dilate. Do I need one? I stepped forward, or he stepped forward. No, you don't. His mouth covered mine. Dear God, he tasted amazing. Whiskey and his own natural essence. His lips were soft, softer than I ever expected. His tongue found its way against mine, and the kiss grew deeper. He rolled and glided, making my mind cloud with a need suppressed for too long. I found my head jerked back in a tight grip as our mouths continued to duel. We ate at each other as if we were starved. My arms pulled him closer, wanting nothing more than to feel all of him against me. His hard length pressed into my stomach, and my core flooded with desire. I knew it would be like this if I ever got a chance to kiss him. He was all consuming and demanding everything I could ever want. Logic should tell me to stop, to take a step back and think about what going any further would mean. But all I could do was drown in the cascade of desire. Hagen released my hair, and his hands slid up my thighs, pulling them apart and wrapping them around his waist. He rubbed his rock hard cock along the seam of my pussy and against my aching clit. Hagen, I moaned, wanting more. I need. I know what you need. I'm just not sure you can handle it. He licked down my throat and then nipped the juncture of my neck and shoulder. I jerked and my core clenched, arching into the pleasure pain. More, please, more. I couldn't believe I was begging. Now, if only I knew what I was begging for. Hagen began to grind his cock back and forth against the sensitive nerve of the apex of my cleft, creating a rhythm that had every cell in my body screaming. Come for me, Starlight. His hand slid farther under my skirt, and then his thumb began to stroke my clit. I detonated, throwing my head back as stars flashed behind my eyes. My pussy spasmed and contracted. I lost all sense of place and time. My arousal flooded through my core, soaking his thumb and bringing out a groan from his exploring mouth. I can't wait to taste your sweet cunt. One day you will come while I fuck you with my mouth. His words spurred another contraction. Holy fuck, dirty talk got me off. Slowly I came down from the best orgasm of my life and realized I was sitting on Hagen's lap. His erection was a brand against under my bottom, and his breath was ragged. I looked into his blue depths that almost seemed black since his pupils ate up his eyes. I tried to reach for his pants, but he stilled my movements. I won't take you, no matter how much I want to. Watching you come apart has to be enough. He threw his head back against the couch and closed his eyes, releasing a pained breath. I don't understand. You know as well as I do that there's more to this attraction than we wanted to admit. It's been there for as long as I can remember. He lifted his head. Starlight, if I take you, the world you know will change. You won't be the innocent and naive Kepos heiress anymore. My reputation will taint yours. Being with me could mean Dara pushing you out of your father's company, and I don't think you're ready for that. The mention of Dara was like throwing a bucket of ice water on my desire. I slid from Hagen's lap and immediately missed the heat of him. I rested my face in my palms. It wouldn't matter if we slept together or not. Dara will take everything from Adrian the second she got the opportunity. If I don't stop her, she may orchestrate something like what happened to Papa to get rid of Adrian. I was going to stop her, and it all revolved around Papa's death. Whatever the cost, I want you to use your connections to find out the truth about Papa. Then you know my terms. I turned to him. There were three options. Which one? So you're admitting firewater and the patent for elderflower used in it belongs to you. I am doing no such thing. So you're willing to sleep with me despite the fact you could lose your job and your ability to keep an eye on your father's company? I opened my mouth to answer, but he cut me off, cupping my face and placing a thumb on my lips. No, think about it first. What I won't be what I won't be on your terms, but mine. It isn't sweet and gentle. It will require you to give yourself to me completely. I will corrupt you, and you won't want it to stop. In the end, I will ruin you. Okay, that's it. Whew. Sorry that took so long. I know, but y'all loved it. I was outside and I stared at some dust, and my throat is itchy. So, all right, 3.99 free on KU. Go get it. I think it's free on KU, isn't it? 4.99. Sorry, I said 3.99. 4.99. All right, Sunday morning, 10 o'clock. Be here or be square. I have a book by somebody. Neener Beaner. Who do I have? What do I have? I don't even remember. I got the book. I just don't remember who it was. Finn. Something Finn. Oh my gosh, that's awful. What is her name? Ugh. I have the book. Where's that? I know it's good. I'm gonna finish this book. I think Scarlet Finn. No, it's not all only. I need to know. That's what I need to know. There's two books. One's got all in it and one's got only in it. I need to know which book, the first one or the second one. I think I asked you, didn't I? Scarlet Finn, where are you? It is not all only. She has one that is called Go All In, or there's one that's called Only Yours. I'm not reading both of them. They're both on KU. I just need to know which one I'm reading. Go All In or Only Yours. That is not the title. I'm telling you, then she needs to send me a book because I have Go All In or Only Yours, or Run Me, or Fighting Back, or Explicit Instructions. Dude, hey, I know what. You sent You sent stuff on it this morning, didn't you? Like that Master of Sin. That's going to be a series I'm going to get into. Well, it must. You're right, but it ain't on here. I don't know which one that's supposed to be. We might have an issue here then, because that book I don't have. All right, let's see. All only. She's cray cray. I think Amazon's cray cray. All right, I got the book. Good deal. We're covered. All righty, y'all. Go Buy Master of Sin is the first book in the Gods of Vegas series. And then go get and then be back here. All righty. Everybody have a good night because I'm tired and I'm going to bed. All righty. I love you guys. Happy reading.